So it's 2 o'clock and we are live. And for our half hour this time, we're going to be talking with our town librarian, who's our town librarian for just a little bit, tiny bit longer. But she's been working on some really interesting stuff. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to see what's next for her too. So Heather, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here.
All right. Now, in case anybody hasn't heard, give us the news. What's happening? Where you're going? When is it happening?
Sure, absolutely. I have accepted a new position. I will be going to the Weymouth Public Libraries to be the assistant director of their system down there. And I will be here in Hopkinton through July 9th. So I will be trying to wrap up and transition a whole lot of things before then to keep the library moving smoothly forward during that transition.
So I don't know very much about Weymouth, but I do know it's a big place. There's over 50,000 people living there.
Yes, it's a sizable community. It's actually a library that has a main library and a branch. So it's a larger library, and they just renovated, opened their new main building in October of 2020 of all times. So it's an opportunity really to take the experience I've gotten here, seeing the library here through that transition, and reapply it in a larger community, a larger library. And I'm excited to help them out. Obviously, I will also miss a number of things about Hopkinton.
Yes.
Yes.
So actually, I'm not really sure. Is Hopkinton the first library that you have been the head of, or was there before then?
Yes, this was my first directorship. So
okay.
I was the adult services librarian here before that, and my previous position was a sort of frontline reference and programming position up in New Hampshire.
I see. Well, as sad as it's going to be for us, you're a great librarian. I do wish you well. I'm excited for you. It's so exciting to start a different adventure, and just have new challenges and new things going on. So best of luck in that.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right. Now, before you go, let's talk a little bit about this strategic plan that just came out recently. And my first question, before we actually talk about some of the details, is this a typical document? I know what a strategic plan is, and they oftentimes look out 5 years. Do libraries typically have these?
Yes, libraries do. In fact, the state of Massachusetts requires, if you want to be eligible for certain extra grant funding, that comes down sometimes through the State Board of Library Commissioners, you actually have to have one on file, and you have to have an annual action plan on file, which is a document you file every year that says these are the specific things that the library is going to do this year under our strategic plan. So most libraries have them. Not everybody does. It's not something you have to get most of your state aid or anything like that. But it's encouraged. Massachusetts does a great job of incentivizing libraries and communities to do the right things. So it's certainly incentivized.
Yeah, that's, there's a lot of that. Oh, here's some money, but here are all the strings attached with it. I'm not talking too directly about our, beautiful new bike lanes that'll be coming through the center of town.
I'm not going to get involved in that one before I leave.
Yeah. All I know is you either love them or you do not like them at all. There's really very little middle ground in that. But you know what? I understand. It's people. What's from that movie Aladdin? The Golden Rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rule. All right, let's talk. So, is this the first strategic plan, or had you made them before here?
This is the first one that I have personally been involved in, but we did have a strategic plan before. In fact, some of the money that you become eligible for when you have a strategic plan is construction grant funding. So we were not eligible for all of that money that the state gave us to build this beautiful new building without a strategic plan on file. So that plan that we had expired about the same time that the building was built. And it's been a couple of years, we were a little busy transitioning in, but we really needed to get one in place again, not only for the state grant purposes, but it's also just very useful to have something that clearly articulates what you're aiming for as an organization. It keeps the staff aligned. It keeps the community understanding of what you're doing and why, where the library is trying to go. And it's a good way to kind of make sure that you are really touching base. We always try to listen to the community and adjust what we're doing in response to the community, but doing a strategic plan is really a special opportunity to listen in a way that's really purposeful and intent, and not something that you have time to do all the time every day. So it's a good thing to do in general. I'm a fan of them.
Yes, I agree with that. And tell me a little bit about the process that went into crafting this. Did you pull these ideas out of your own head, or how did that go?
It's really, it should be a community-driven process, and we tried to make it one. So we did work with a consultant, and this is my moment to say, many thanks to Ruth Cowell, the consultant, who was just fantastic to work with, and also many thanks to the Hopkinton Public Library Foundation, who paid her fees so that we could work with her. But one of the first things that we did was convene an advisory group representing, of course, we had somebody from the trustees, somebody from the Friends of the Library, somebody from the Library Foundation, but then we also invited a few other community members in, so that we had community represented in the group that was kind of guiding the process and looking at the process. And their role was really to make sure that to keep us honest, to make sure that as we were creating the plan, both the plan and the process really did reflect the community and incorporate the community's wishes. So we worked with them. We generated some questions we wanted to ask. We held focus groups, and we did a community survey. And then we took all that data that we got from those exercises right back to the advisory group, the staff, and the trustees, and sort of sifted through it together and started to say, okay, what are the big ideas? What's coming up again and again? What is the community asking us for? What are the themes we're seeing? And it was from those discussions and the outcomes of those discussions and the themes and ideas that we identified that we then took and determined what our strategic priorities were going to be and how we were going to kind of move forward, what our priorities would be for the next few years. So it really just, it came directly out of community input, pretty much, as it should. Yeah.
And what was your sample size? How many members of the community gave you their thoughts and input?
On the survey, it was nearly 400 people, which is pretty good. I actually, we did a community survey a couple of years back, and we tried to capitalize on the new building, and we sent out physical mailings to the entire town, and we did all this publicity, and we got about 400 responses. So I'm thinking 400 is about what you get. And it was a good number. It's a good amount of data. It gets overwhelming when you get even more. So it was enough to really feel we'd heard something, and to bite into it and have something meaty there to look at. But it was enough to kind of wrap our heads around so that we could get something useful out of it.
Right. How long has this been in process? How long did it take to make this?
Well, the whole process took a few months start to finish. We started sometime, I think, late last fall, and we had a draft ready for the trustees to vote on actually in January. Which we pushed it. It was a pretty fast process, but it was enough time to be thorough. And then we took a couple of months after approval to do things like the graphic design and make sure it looked nice for release. So we actually released it in the sort of late winter, early spring to the community. And I've been, putting it out there ever since, offering to do things like this, come out and talk about it. I will be at the select board tomorrow night to talk about it. So, it's been probably, I'd say, about 9 months or so since we got in and really launched it.
And putting it out there, obviously it is on your website and you can see the whole thing there. Is there anything else involved other than publicizing that it lives on your website when you put it out there, when you release it? Is there any other parts of that?
Well, we share it through all of the publicity channels that we have. So we mention it in our e-newsletter. We put it out on our social media. shared it with the community groups that we know. We did print some copies, and they're actually sitting, some of them, at the circulation desk. So for people who want to hold it physically, you can, which I'm really proud of. And and then there's an ongoing process of communication around the whole plan that will happen every year. And I don't want to commit to anything extraordinarily specific, because there will be a new director who may have their own approach and preferences. But the idea is this is a living document. It's not something we do and then it sits on our website and on the shelf for 5 years, and we do it again in 5 years. The idea is that we have these annual action plans that really reflects, okay, we have this plan, we have these priorities. What are we practically going to do this year to do something about that? And so those action plans, we're going to create them every year. We've already done ours for the next fiscal year coming up in just a couple of weeks. It starts. And those are going to go on the website. There should be a report at the end of every fiscal year to update the community on this was the plan and this is what we actually, accomplished off of it. Mm-hmm. So it's a process of ongoing communication. And when we set the action plans for every year, that should also reflect changes in the community or new ideas. So there will probably be, some surveying that's happening probably in the fall every year. As we go out and say, any new ideas, anything you'd like to see, and then we can assess how those ideas fit into our strategic priorities and whether to make them, goals for the coming year.
Right. So I love this type of stuff. I love ideas. I love people putting thoughts out there. One of the things I often say during the course of my day is that, you know what? I don't have all the best ideas, but I want the best. So we need to have everybody contributing. So Absolutely. we're so close right now for me asking you, let's have the overview of the plan and give some things. But the first thing I want to ask is, going through this process, were you surprised? Did anything come out and be like, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of this that way, or I thought maybe something different? Or did you feel that things were pretty validating kind of along the path that you had set?
I think, for me, what we heard was generally what I thought the community, broadly would say. Of course, there are always specific ideas that come up, and I cannot come up with any on the top of my head, but things are like, oh, okay, that's a new idea, so specific, the library should do this program or offer this or that specific thing. But the broad feedback, what I summarize it as, the town said they really appreciate and value what the library does along certain axes and in certain ways, and they also want to see a lot more in certain ways. And that was not a surprise. And the general themes of where those things clustered in terms of what people want more of in particular, it was reflective of the kinds of things that we hear that people want. So it was good to get that validation that what we hear informally, that what we sense is out there, really is broadly most of what people are asking for. And it's good to document that so that we can then show that we're not just making these decisions based on what we think probably the community wants. We really have that feedback and that voice that says, yes, this is where we want the library to go.
Now, is this more of an aspirational document or more of here's what we're doing? It's a roadmap and we're on the road.
I think it's a little bit of both. So we have a mission statement, and the mission statement is, it's a big idea because you want to be reaching for something big. But we also have to figure out, okay, but how do we pin this down to practical things? So I think of a strategic plan as kind of in layers. You have your mission, and then you have in our case, we have these 5 key priority areas that we're going to work within that are broad and broadly framed. And then for each of those, we have, here's our vision. So let's pin it down a little bit more to what does this look like if we achieve something meaningful in this priority area? And then within that, how are we going to do that? Here are some, we have 3 to 5 bullet points for every priority area that lay out general directions. So they're not, we're going to do this specific thing, but they're, for instance, we're going to collaborate more with, our community members. We're going to make sure that our technological resources support people's engagement with the world beyond our physical resources. They're concrete, but not, down to the action item level. And then you take that, and every year it becomes the action plan, where you're actually saying these are the literal projects and initiatives that we're carrying forth. So it kind of goes from the general down to the concrete and specific, depending on what level you're looking at it at.
What I find really fascinating is that your mission statement does not contain words such as books, reading, literature. It really shows how a library has evolved as a creature of our community, and it's just so much more than just checking out books and taking them home and reading them and bringing them back. It's really amazing.
And that mission statement really grew out of when we were looking at what are those big ideas, what are the most profound concepts that people are expressing in the sort of most highest conceptual level as they're talking about the library. And of course, people talk about books and resources, but it's the purpose behind that, to explore, to discover, to engage. And that's, in fact, that language also came straight out of the tagline that we have, which we've had for several years, that we developed, as a staff, thinking about the community, back just about when we reopened the building and we redid our logo. So we certainly heard that it's much more than books, and it's really about what the books and the information does. You hear in our field, the kind of popular mode of talking about libraries, at least in the last few years, has been, libraries as a platform. So we are the launching point, and we provide that foundation so that community members or community groups can lift off from there. And that's really about, more what you are and how you help people than literally, what is in your building to some degree.
Right, exactly. It really resonates with me. I'm also in kind of like that lane of connecting people and helping them. So now let's get into the overview, the 10,000 foot look at your new strategic plan. Give us some highlights, please.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we have a mission statement and we have 5 key priorities, and I'll probably just read them out, and you're going to have to forgive me because at this point I'm looking at my notes.
Well, you are a librarian. You are a librarian, Heather. I'm just going to say it. I'll never forget a time when we were at a meeting and I got a glimpse of your planner. I had never seen so many words on a planner in my life. And I was like, that's a librarian right there.
I have it sitting next to me and I would show it, but I don't necessarily want it all.
Okay, so here we go.
All right, so our new mission statement is that we inspire exploration, discovery, and engagement as we enrich and strengthen the social network of our diverse community. And to do that, we've identified these 5 key strategic priority areas. So I think rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of each, I'm just going to give you sort of the priority area and the vision. And then anybody who's interested in more, as Jim said, it's on our website, hopkintonlibrary.org/strategicplan.asp. Or if you go to hopkintonlibrary.org and look for library information at the top of the page and click on that, there'll be something in the left-hand sidebar for the strategic plan, and it's all there in detail. But our 5 kind of areas that we're going to work within to accomplish our mission in the next 5 years are: number 1, connecting our community. So our vision there is to be a community gathering place that brings the town together through shared spaces, resources, programs, and events. Number 2, our second priority area is providing access to education, arts, culture, and knowledge. So our vision is to reaffirm our commitment to a library's fundamental focus on reading, learning, and personal exploration, and to serve as a trusted source for accurate information. Our third priority is creating an inclusive, welcoming, safe environment for all. So our vision is to be a community destination that provides spaces, resources, and experiences that are welcoming, comfortable, safe, and respectful for our entire community and beyond. Our fourth priority is striving to deliver an exceptional and customer-focused user experience. And that means that we will be committed to continual improvement and aim to provide top-notch service that responds effectively to changing community needs. And last, but certainly not least, our final priority is to steward and obtain the resources to accomplish the rest of these strategic priorities. So making sure that we're leveraging the resources we have, financial and otherwise, their fullest potential, and also advocating for and seeking out the additional support that we need to fully meet the community's expectations. And within each of those, again, we've got 3 to 5, kind of directions that we're taking to make some forward progress that then stem into these individual bit by bit goals every year on the action plans.
Yeah, they sound great. Those sound really good. As part of your process, I should have asked this earlier to compare to this. As part of this process, I'm assuming you looked at other library strategic plans?
Looked through them, yes, absolutely.
Is there, just out of curiosity, when you were building Hopkinton's, did you notice kind of like a thread that travels through, or are each of these libraries as unique as we're the Hopkinton Hillers, versus the Ashland Clockers? Are they like kind of unique and flavored like that, or is there a lot of commonality in the mission that you have?
I think there is certainly commonality. I mean, most libraries are going to say something along the lines of our first 2 priorities: connecting our community, providing access to information. That's so foundational to what a public library does that it would be pretty surprising to see a strategic plan from a library that did not gesture at those concepts. The rest of it, you do see variation. Customer service is often there, supporting your staff, and we have a sub bullet point that's about staff training and staff support. That's usually there somewhere. But how people break it out, varies, and there are often community specific things that emerge. For us, that third item, creating an inclusive, welcoming, safe environment for all, that kind of work is absolutely foundational to what a public library does, but it ended up as its own priority and not as sort of a sub point of something else, in part because of how much we heard from our community, how much that matters. And in part because our select board recently adopted that anti-racism pledge that really directs, departments to take this seriously. Again, not that we would not anyway. So there's things like that where things get different emphases, or you might see slightly different things that are community reflective and very local. And the formatting varies a lot. Our plan is a little unusual. Many libraries, at least traditionally, will write these plans that do go down to the action item level within the strategic plan itself. We didn't do that because I think personally, and the trustees agreed with me, that trying to plan your individual projects out 5 years in advance, when we've seen in the last year and in for this library, really in the last 4 years since our renovation, how much things change and how fast. We wanted to leave ourselves flexibility to have a clear direction, but to plan our project work and our initiatives year by year based on the ground situational factors and new needs coming out of the community, new ideas coming out of the community. So our plan is in some sense a little bit higher level than a lot that you'll see, but I think it's the way library plans are going. Framingham just wrote one, which is a fantastic plan as well, and they take a similar approach to us where they don't pin themselves down. They leave themselves space to kind of experiment a little bit and work year by year, which is really valuable at this point with how much things change.
All right. So we're down to about 5 minutes. I'm not going to be able to hit everything in this one, but I'm really interested in this, which is your number one, connecting our community. I would say, from my personal perspective, that is not a traditional role that I saw growing up. A library was a resource. It was a place where you went to acquire information, and bring it home and enjoy it and then bring it back. I'm just curious. I don't know if you have experienced or seen that shift to know like when it happened and when it kind of like spread, because you had mentioned that you think a lot of the strategic plans that you saw kind of have some type of aspect of that. I'm wondering like when libraries became actively interested in connecting our community as well as serving the community?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it was before my time. So it was at least before, I'd say either the 90s or the 2000s, and my guess would be the 2000s. But I got into this field because that's what I wanted to do. I spent a lot of time in college, long story, immersed in the papers of John W. Gardner, who's a fantastic community motivational speaker. He's passed, but whose real theme was rebuilding community. And I was going to be an archivist, and then I veered into public libraries because I realized I wanted to see more of people than I did as an archivist, and because I was really invested in this project of community building. So by 2008, 2009, at least, now I'm giving everybody exactly how old I am. Everyone's going, wow, she's young, or wow, she's old. But by about that time, it was certainly the way the field was going already. I got to graduate school, and I took courses for my master's degree in outcomes assessment, which is really something you think about. How are you impacting the community, not just how many books are going out. I took courses in community informatics. So by 2010-ish, it was out there. I'm guessing it was a 2000s thing, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Okay. Now, earlier, we're down to a few minutes, so I want to.
You got to cut me off if I'm talking too much, because I will go.
Well, you know what? I'll cut you off when you're not interesting. Okay. So far, everything's been really interesting. You had mentioned that along with this fiscal year, there's one aspect that you're concentrating on. Is that correct?
Well, we have certainly, if you look at the action plan for this year, there are clear themes that emerged in terms of the projects that came up. So I'm going back to my notes. Obviously things like getting back to full normal services post-COVID, that is a clear theme. We've got a number of action items that relate to that, as well as continuing some of the services that we've implemented during COVID, finding ways to do that with the staffing we have, and the fact that we're going back to reallocating staffing to pre-COVID levels and services. We're launching, expanding several special areas of the collections. The real blockbuster here being that we will be starting a library of things. Thank you to the foundation for a $10,000 gift to launch that with, which is really phenomenal and very exciting. And please, folks in the community, watch for we're probably going to put out a survey in the fall to kind of gauge interest in specific items we could buy. And then we'll be putting plans and structures in place that we can move forward with marketing and technology and staffing in ways that support our plan. So kind of a year of sub-planning following on the big plan. And then just really working on what we're already doing and making sure that whatever we're doing, we're really adjusting it as needed to bring it more in line with the strategic plan and what we heard from the community, to better reflect the needs and diversity of the community. And certainly another theme, that's in there is there's a number of things around increasing collaborations with the community, both on the individual level and on sort of the organizational group level. So there's a lot in there. People should go look. It's a long document. I think my staff may be a little intimidated sometimes looking at it, but it's going to be really exciting, I think, for folks to pull it together. And there's a lot in there that'll be useful, I think, to do for the community. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool document that obviously has a lot of energy and thought behind it. So it's going to really be interesting to watch how that unfolds. It must be a little bit sad for you that, you just poured yourself into this document and now you have a new horizon that just opened up for you.
It is, if anything, though, I'm really glad to have it done, because I think that it sets the next person coming in up, for success. And it does so a lot of times as a director, you come in and there's somebody just wrote a strategic plan and it's not yours. But with our focus on keeping it flexible, this really, I think, is the best of both worlds. It provides a structure to work within and it provides priorities, but the initial individual initiatives and projects are still up to the director to work with the staff to decide. So someone can still come in and put their own stamp on it, and still be serving the community in line with the strategic
Perfect.
plan. So, yeah.
That's perfect. Hey, thank you for all the work that you've done here, and best of luck in the future.
So much appreciated. Thanks for your work too. It's always been great.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time on the Hangout Hour.